is a warm and beautiful evening in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, and his plane was just about to land. The plane carrying one of the most respected politicians in America. The Nautical Inn Convention Center in Lake Havasu City, where over 250 people have gathered to pay tribute to retiring U.S. Senator Barry Goldwater, who is leaving the Senate after more than 30 years of public service. It is approximately 7:15 p.m. Dinner is to begin at 7:30. Some people are beginning to wonder if the senator is going to show up or not. In the past several months, he's had to cancel numerous appearances, mainly due to the fact that Congress was not out of session until last weekend. We're looking around now the convention center area, and you can see all the people mingling, waiting for the senator to arrive. In just a moment, we'll take a quick look back at Senator Barry Goldwater's early days, leading up to the beginning of his historic political career. I'm Jim Heath. I'll be the Master of Ceremonies for tonight's program, and hope you enjoy it. As I'm sure the many people who have gathered here are going to enjoy the festivities live in Lake Havasu this evening. While we're waiting for the senator, let's take a quick look back at the beginning of Barry Goldwater's life and career. He was born on January 1st, 1909 in Phoenix. At the time of his birth, Arizona was still a territory, and the population of Phoenix was less than 10,000 people. He would be the oldest child. He would have a younger brother, Bob, and a younger sister, Caroline. His father, Baron, and his mother, Josephine, were married in 1907. Josephine would take the children on camping trips to every remote corner of the state. Baron would run the Goldwater department store. And Barry Goldwater would fall in love with Arizona. He would have many hobbies, like radio. He would later credit himself as being the first disc jockey in Arizona. And photography. He loved to take pictures. Years later, a book of his favorites would be published. Barry Goldwater had a friend film what Barry considered an historic event. His going down the Colorado Rapids in the Grand Canyon. He would be the 73rd person to make it successfully. But Barry Goldwater was not a success in school. He was elected freshman class president at Phoenix Union High School, but his grades were too poor to continue. His father then sent him to Staunton Military Academy in Virginia, a decision Barry Goldwater would call a smart one years later. Barry excelled there, and he graduated as the outstanding military cadet in his class. He came back to Arizona and enrolled at the University of Arizona in 1928. But the next spring, his father died, and he took over the Goldwater store. In 1948, he won a seat on the Phoenix City Council, and 4 years later, he would upset incumbent Senator Ernest McFarland and himself become a U.S. Senator. And soon thereafter, he was seen as the natural choice for president in 1964. On an historic day in Prescott, Arizona, he would announce his intentions to seek the presidency. It was at the Cow Palace, at the Republican National Convention in 1964, that Barry Goldwater would make history.
Your nomination. I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. Let me remind you also that moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue.
Well, welcome back. Senator Barry Goldwater, as you can see, has arrived at the Nautical Inn. It's about 7:25, so everything is right on schedule. And dinner should begin here in about 5 minutes. As I said, everything is right on schedule.
The prime LC.
I'll make it. Why don't you all sit down?
Many dignitaries here tonight. State Representative Don Aldridge in your camera right now, and his wife Mary in the blue. And the mayor of Lake Havasu, Jim Spezzano, standing up there with his wife, and Tom Barry, the editor of one of the local newspapers in town, trying to catch up on the action back there. Lee Shoblum, the owner of London Bridge Broadcasting, and I believe shaking Roy Dutton's hand right now is Steve Daniels, a writer for the Arizona Republic newspaper. And Judge Bert Scott is getting something signed. While the mingling continues and right before the program begins, let's take a look back at Barry Goldwater's historic run for the presidency of this nation. Barry Goldwater would literally be drafted for president in 1963, and at the time he felt he would be running against his friend, the current incumbent President John F. Kennedy. But that was not to be. Kennedy would be assassinated in November of '63, and Lyndon Johnson would become the president. Barry Goldwater knew immediately that no longer would this be a campaign merely of politics and policy, but one of emotion as well. But Goldwater fought forward, and he felt deep in his heart that although this might not be his year to be president, eventually his philosophy would be the political philosophy of this country. Desperately in need of money, on Election Eve 1964, the Republican National Committee hired a well-known actor to try to raise last-minute funds. Little did anyone know that this actor would be the one to carry the conservative message right onto the White House. In a 24-hour period, actor Ronald Reagan would raise over $8 million and set himself up for a run for the governor of California. But Barry Goldwater's presidential election was not to be. Lyndon Johnson would be overwhelmingly re-elected, and Barry Goldwater would come home to Arizona. But the political bug would bite again. In 1968, he would run for the U.S. Senate and win. He would be re-elected in 1974 and in 1980. And he continued to be one of the most influential politicians in American government.
My name is Jim Heath, and I'm the chairman of the Draft Goldwater for President in '88 committee. Actually, on the way from the airport, I asked the senator if he would be interested in being drafted for president, and he responded by saying, "Hell no." In August of 1983, I wrote a personal letter to Senator Goldwater asking him about some of the various questions facing our nation and state at that time, along with some personal questions. And he started the letter by writing, "If we pay attention, follow our constitutional concepts, practice a little morality, raise our children right, and make work a good habit, there's no stopping America. It will continue to be the greatest country in the world. But if we don't do those things, we will be in real trouble." And he concluded that letter by stating that I'd like to spend more of my leisure time enjoying life in this wonderful state of Arizona where I was born. Well, Senator Goldwater is coming home to Arizona this year, but leisure time, I doubt it. The senator will probably have more speaking engagements than ever. That's encouraging. Perhaps it's time for a new book with No Apologies Part 2. The exciting and nice thing for all of us as fellow Arizonans is the fact that Barry Goldwater is Arizona. In the eyes of millions of Americans, Barry Goldwater symbolizes our state. And I know that generations of Arizona leaders to come will be proud to represent the same state as Mr. Arizona himself, Senator Barry Goldwater. Now, allow me a couple more minutes to clarify, and the press is here. To clarify Barry Goldwater as Mr. Arizona, one has to study the Goldwater roots. Now, many of us know some obvious facts, like, for instance, Morris Goldwater, Barry Goldwater's uncle, was a leading Arizona politician and was vice chairman of the Constitutional Convention after Arizona became a state in 1912. And even the most juvenile of us will assume that the Goldwater family had something to do with the Goldwater department stores that we see predominantly in the Southwest. But did you know that the senator was born on New Year's Day? As a matter of fact, his brother Bob was born on the 4th of July, and his sister Carolyn was born on April 15th, 1912, the day the Titanic sunk. Now we're getting to the important stuff. Senator Goldwater's father installed a saloon in the basement of their house when Prohibition went into effect. As the senator mentions in his book, the country went dry, but that bar was always wet. Perhaps the most impressive statements about the Goldwater legacy is the fact that Barry Goldwater's grandfather, Mike, started a whole new Arizona city on his own. Perhaps you've heard of Ehrenberg. It's been in the news quite recently. It was a little town practically washed away in the flooding earlier this year. Well, Mike Goldwater and Barry Goldwater's Uncle Morris named the town Ehrenberg in honor of a German mining engineer who had become Mike's best friend. As the senator states, Mike Goldwater found Aaron Berg's dead body near the De Palma store, which was operated by a character known as Bottle Ass Smith. The murder was never solved, but thanks to Mike, Aaron Berg's name is still on the map of Arizona. How many of you remember the theme of the Goldwater department store up until the 1950s? Do I have anybody that remembers the theme? Sounded like a political slogan from the beginning. The best always. Little trivia fact there for you. During Barry Goldwater's first run for the U.S. Senate, his opponent called him a ribbon clerk. Barry responded by saying, "Yeah, I was a damn good ribbon clerk. I'm proud of it." When the city of Phoenix was too slow to create an airstrip, Barry Goldwater borrowed a tractor and a drag from a Japanese gardener. The runway which resulted from their efforts is now 8 left, 26 right of the international airport operated by the city of Phoenix, named Sky Harbor. How many of you know the real reason why Barry Goldwater registered as a Republican? After all, his Uncle Morris and his father Mike were both Democrats. Well, it seems that Barry Goldwater had a strong sympathy for the underdog. The Democrat Party in Arizona had apparently ruled with such arrogance that it offended him. As the senator has stated, my decision to register as a Republican was an act of defiance. Before I conclude my opening remarks, I'd like to read a paragraph from the senator's book, With No Apologies. Whenever I get to thinking that perhaps I would be a happier man today had I stayed in Phoenix to merchandise ladies' fashions, I come up against the solid truth. I have tried. No one ever said that life should be easy or that we must succeed in everything we undertake. But to recognize a wrong and not do anything about it is the coward's way out. The world may seem dark and cold beyond redemption for a moment, but only for a moment. We know Almighty God intended His children to be free. We know the pursuit of freedom has been a relentless quest. We should know that despite our scientific, technological sophistication, this is still God's world. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. Yes, Barry Goldwater is Arizona. To millions of Americans and to millions of people across the globe, Barry Goldwater symbolizes what our republic is all about.
Thank you.
Senator. Many have disagreed with Senator Goldwater, but no one has ever accused him of not speaking his mind or making his position clear. Perhaps columnist Andy Rooney, a diehard liberal, sums it up best. Barry Goldwater has given the word class to the word politician by dedicating his life in trying to do the right thing for his country. If you disagree with the way he tried to do it, as I so often did, you can't disagree with what he was trying to do. Barry Goldwater is a great American. Senator Sam Nunn, a Democrat from Georgia, referred to the senator's lifelong habit of shooting from the hip. His way of operating, Senator Nunn said, was always ready, fire, aim. So tonight we gather together as fellow Americans, Arizonans, and Republicans to celebrate more than just a political career, but a wonderful life and a wonderful tomorrow that lies ahead. And now, I'm happy to introduce to you our Republican boss. In Arizona, the boss of all Republicans is Mr. Burton Kruglich. It has been Bert's guidance and his perseverance that has finally put the Republican Party in Arizona in the lead. Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of our party, Mr. Bert Kruglich.
So delighted to be here and bring you greetings, ladies and gentlemen, from your state Republican Party. And it's turnouts like this, it's events like this, honoring people like Senator Goldwater, that makes us what we are. Patriots, great Americans, people who believe in what is going on in this country, and we're dedicated and committed to see that we are successful in our endeavors as we go forward, not only in the next 2 weeks, but in the years ahead. You know, I got started in politics in 1964 when the senator first ran for the presidency. And a lot of us believe he was a man a little ahead of his time because it was his wisdom, his guidance, his leadership that brings us to where we are today. and I was very proud to become involved at that time, and I've been involved ever since, and Barry's been an inspiration to me. I would also like to say that Jim Heath has been an inspiration to me. 2 years ago, when they were selecting precinct committeemen to become state committeemen, Jim was elected as the youngest state committeeman in the state of Arizona's history at the age of 18. You couldn't be much younger to become a precinct committeeman than 18. And he became a precinct committeeman, and what made me feel good is that when I ran for state chairman a little less than 2 years ago, he gave one of my seconding speeches, and I'm appreciative of your support and help, Jim. And I see you and the others like you, our young people who are the future, the guiding lights of this country. It's a real pleasure and real honor for me to be chairman of this party at this time. I hope that all of you will make a commitment 2 weeks from today to get involved with Republican Day in Arizona. That's the day we've declared Election Day to be our day, and we're asking each of you to take and give at least a half a day on Election Day to work in your precincts, to work in your blocks, to work in your areas, to turn out the vote for our candidates who are running, so that the tradition and the beliefs of Barry Goldwater will be carried out in the great state of Arizona. So I want to thank you for allowing me to be with you tonight, for allowing me a few moments of your time to say thank you for your time that you're giving on behalf of this great party and this great country, and to be here tonight to honor this great gentleman, a friend of mine, Senator Barry Goldwater. And thank you all very much. And thank you, Jim.
Now I have the opportunity to wish you a very enjoyable meal. And to start things off, I'd like you to listen to our jug band over here to my left and your right. And later on, the Lake Havasu High School Jazz Band will be out. But first, here are the jug band.
Preparations for the Barry Goldwater dinner actually began when Senator Goldwater wrote and said that he would be pleased to accept an invitation to be the main speaker. The local press was then notified that he was coming to town, and a dinner committee was formed. It was originally set for Saturday, October 11th. Tickets were sold. But then disaster struck. Congress had not adjourned. The dinner would have to be postponed until Tuesday, October 21st. But that Tuesday came, and it was a terrific success. Then the local press started writing about it. It made the front page of the Lake Havasu City Herald. And perhaps it did the most good for gubernatorial candidate Ev Meekum when it made the front page of the State and Valley section of the Arizona Republic, the largest paper in the state. Mayor Clint Eastwood sent his best wishes, as did the Vice President, the President, Congressman Jack Kemp, Mrs. Pearl Bailey Belson, who sent also a financial contribution, and the President sent a telegram. When it was all completed, the dinner had raised over $700 for Havasu for Youth, a local youth organization and charity.
Of course, it wasn't any surprise to me that it was a sellout crowd. I think it is very significant for Lake Havasu City in that Barry Goldwater has been here before, but not as his final farewell, if you will.
He's a good friend. He's lot of fun to be with. And you certainly never have to wonder where he stands. You find that out.
Seriously, Senator, did this make any difference to the prospects for the Pentagon's budget?
I'm not going to talk about it, gentlemen. Now, goddammit, it's top secret. Get it through your heads. That's the answer. In fact, it's a stupid question, if you don't mind my saying so.
The Arizona politics, I've always believed, has been different. It's been better, cleaner, more civilized. You don't hate your opponents, you fight against them and end up friends. I counted up once of the 10 or 12 people who'd run against me for Congress, and with one exception, I think we were all good friends today, people who I'd like to see and who say good things about you. And Goldwater helped in no small way to bring that kind of civilized politics into being in modern times in Arizona, and I think it's something that's served our state well.
We have in Barry Goldwater Mr. Arizona, Mr. Conservative, someone who is admired greatly by the people of Lake Havasu City and all of Arizona, and it's a great honor to have such a man attend a dinner as a farewell to the people of Arizona in our town.
He had accepted the invitation. His office staff promised me he would be there, but at the last moment he could have felt ill, or Congress might not have adjourned, or maybe he had to stay in Washington, or maybe the weather was bad. There were a whole number of things that I could not have controlled, and he did have a sense of drama. The dinner was to begin at 7:30, and he flew in and landed at about 7:20, and of course the 40 minutes preceding that were a little tense.
He, first of all, enjoyed it very, very much, was very appreciative, genuinely appreciative, that, and almost bewildered that people could show him that much respect. He really and truly, down deep in his heart, does not believe that he is anything special, that he has done anything special for this country that would merit that kind of love and affection from people that with whom he's not personally acquainted.
We have differences in generation, perhaps, and philosophy, but the thing that Barry Goldwater brings is a warmthness to this chamber and a keen awareness about our country and its role in the world. You learn from Barry.
The thing I do admire so very much about him and his conservative principles, that I believe he is a conservative, is that he has taken on the new right. He has gone to the jugular vein. When the new right came out in opposition, like Nick Pack and Jerry Falwell and others came out against Sandra Day O'Connor's appointment as being liberal or not clear on the issue of abortion or equal rights or something else, Goldwater stood up as a recognized conservative and say, hey, that's not my brand of conservative.
Now, insofar as Barry's political life is concerned, there are also some who say that he has always shot from the hip too much. Now, I was never inclined to believe that, but when I found out he had to have 2 double hip replacements, even I began to wonder.
We never looked upon Barry Goldwater as an extremist. We looked upon him as a rational, reasonable, practical, logical person. Now, his background differed from many of us. He had a military background, and with his illustrious background, you just don't push it aside and forget about it. You'll live throughout life with it. Even in my limited way, I did have a military background of just 4 years, but you just don't close your eyes to that. And so it was natural for him to say what he did about the military. And it turns out that what he said in many ways was correct. Now, if we had listened to him, very likely we would not have been in Vietnam.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, 9.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. These are the stakes. To make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark, we must either love each other or we must die.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd. The stakes are too high for you to stay home.
There's no justification to treat Barry Goldwater the way he was.
I knew I couldn't win. The day I was writing my acceptance speech, I'm looking over in the corner at the Princeton Research and had a flip chart showing me 20 and Johnson 80. And I said, why don't we tear this speech up and write one and tell them to go to hell, get another candidate? But no, it was too far along. It's never caused me any discomfort. The country didn't want me, so the country didn't want me. I went home.
Barry Goldwater has earned the unbounded affection and admiration of his countrymen and the enduring gratitude of all future generations of America. And here you go, Mr. Conservative.
Remember after my son Teddy had lost his leg to cancer, I think one of the first persons that came by my office to cheer me up was Barry Goldwater. And I remember when my niece Caroline worked here in the Senate for the course of the summer, and Barry Goldwater heard that she was here for the summer, and he called her up and asked her to come down and have lunch with him. So he talked a little about her father.
When you talk about this country and the boys in the services who have died protecting our flag, Barry Goldwater breaks up. It is very easy for him to get tears in his eyes and get a choke in his voice. He loves this country.
When all is said and done, that it was about as successful as it could have been. It was a terrific evening. And everyone who attended, Evan Meekum, who would later become governor, Congressman Stump, Attorney General Corbin, and everyone who attended, I think, felt that it had been a very successful evening. And I don't think Lake Havasu City will ever have a political banquet as enjoyable and as meaningful as that dinner.
I might run again. There's no way in the world for me to say thank you, so I won't try.
First tonight, according to the program, we have two very special Mojave County Republicans who are they do not know that they are receiving an award tonight. We had a special committee determine that these two individuals are worthy of special recognition, and I'm proud to announce that Bert Kruglich, on behalf of the Arizona Republican Party, is giving these awards on behalf of all Arizona Republicans to benefit them and to recognize them as distinguished Republican leaders as they are in their own right. To introduce our two special recipients tonight, our Mojave County Republican chairman and a good friend of mine from way back. We go years, way, way back. Mr. Roy Dunton. Roy.
Thank you, Jim Heath. I'm very proud and honored to be able to sit at the head table with such distinguished people as we have here this evening. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Jim Heath and all his crew for putting on this great affair this evening for the young people of Lake Havasu City. You know, as we get older and the young people replace us, sometimes we wonder what's coming up, and boy, I couldn't be any more proud than I am tonight of these people, young people here in Havasu. It's my honor. Is Lillian Stewart here? Where's Lillian Stewart?
Right here.
Lillian, would you come forth, please? She's coming. While Lillian is coming forward, I'd like to say that Lillian was named Mojave County Republican Lady of the Year, and she's been active in very many Republican women's organizations, Republican organizations in Mojave County. She's a workhorse. As I say, she competed for the Arizona Woman of the Year, Republican Woman of the Year, and she was eased out by about a 92-year little old woman from Gila County. And you came awfully close, closer than you may know. And it's my privilege to present you with this plaque from the Arizona Republican Party. And I'd like to read it to you. It says, the Arizona Republican Party extends its appreciation and gratitude to Lillian Stewart for a dedicated and untiring service to the Republican Party. Signed by Bert Krupik, Chairman, October 1st, 1986. May I congratulate you on your... We have one more plaque to present this evening. Where's Mike Santafanti? Where's our old workhorse secretary? Come on up here, will you please, Mike Santafanti? Mike Santafanti, as some of you know, is the secretary of the Mojave County Republican Committee. He was a candidate for Justice of the Peace. He had a very honorable opponent in Mr. Dave Babbitt, who won the primary, but that didn't keep Mike from working. He worked so hard and so long on behalf of the Republican Party and supporting the winners of all of our candidates. Mike Santafanti, I present you with this plaque on behalf of the State Republican Party. It's my pleasure to give it to you at this time. Congratulations.
Congratulations to both Lillian and Mike. They are definitely well-deserving of recognition here tonight. I'm honored to introduce a top Republican leader who has served as the Attorney General of Arizona since 1978. Bob Corbin has been recognized consistently as one of the top Attorney Generals in our nation. Perhaps we can analyze the respect and admiration Bob has by looking at the fact that he is unopposed for re-election this year. Please say hello now to our Arizona Attorney General, Mr. Bob Corbin.
Thanks, Jim. And isn't it great to be a Republican? I wonder what the Democrats are doing tonight. It's just really my pleasure and privilege to be here with you tonight to honor Arizona's most outstanding citizen that I've ever known about, and I think Arizona has ever had, Senator Goldwater. Senator, I know you're leaving, but I'll say this, you'll never be replaced, and I know that for sure.
Hear, hear.
And you know, Kruglich, I think you could take some lessons from Jim up here. This is one of the greatest turnouts. If we could have something like this for Trunk and Tusk with all the people in the Phoenix area, I think we'd be doing great down there. This is just wonderful. You people deserve a great round of applause to yourselves for filling this room here tonight. You know, if we have this kind of an effort all over the state, we're going to have a complete Republican sweep this coming next 2 weeks from today, I'll guarantee you. And I'll tell you one thing, I want to make him to be my governor. I've had 8 years of a Democrat, and I don't want another 4 of them, I'll guarantee you. So keep up the work, get out and work, and we're going to have a complete Republican sweep. Sorry John McCain can't be here tonight. I'm sure he would have loved to be here to honor Senator Goldwater. You know, he'll be replacing Senator Goldwater, filling the seat, but I'm not too sure, Senator, anybody, as I said earlier, is ever going to replace you in the United States Senate. You know, I became a Republican when Bert was talking up here. He said he got involved in politics in 1964. That's when I got involved in politics also in 1964. A bunch of people conned me into running for Maricopa County attorney that year, and I lucked out and won. But I had the privilege and the pleasure of being in the Cow Palace when you were nominated to be the Republican nominee for President of the United States. And it's an event that I consider one of the highlights of my life, something I will never forget. I can still remember which they took away from you. Hello, Barry. Well, hello, Barry. It's so nice to have you. I remember that was a great song they played at the convention. And I remember when they put your name in the nomination and they had all that, the gold tinfoil came fluttering down from the ceiling with the balloons and everything like that. Maybe some of you in this room were there that day, and it was just really one of the most wonderful occasions in my life. I always consider myself to be a Goldwater Republican, and I still do. I honor President Reagan very much. I'm having a little trouble now, Barry, because I like the president also very, very much, too. In fact, you're the one who got him started. If it hadn't been for you, we probably wouldn't have President Reagan to be President of the United States as he has been for the last 4 terms. Do you remember that speech he made for you during the convention and during the campaign? It was one of the most impressive speeches I think I've ever heard in my life. And then, boy, after hearing that, we knew that he was going to go places in the future, having been governor of California for 2 terms, and then going on to be president of the United States for 2 terms. I just wish we could repeal that amendment we put to the Constitution so that he could run for a 3rd term. It would be great if we just could. But, Senator, it's my pleasure to be here with you tonight. It's been a great honor having known you. We're going to miss you to the bottom of our hearts. We're going to miss you. But, damn it, we're not going to let you go. That's all there is. You're too valuable to the Republican Party. So I just want to say thank you. There's a lot of other speakers who have some things to say here tonight. It's just been my pleasure to be here, and thank all of you for all that you've done, not only in the past, but for this election, and for all you're going to do in the future for the Republican Party. Thank you very much.
I want to go off the program for just a second. Ted Humes, who is running for the Corporation Commission, the 6-year term, is with us here tonight. As good Republicans, I know we are going to vote for Ted 2 weeks from tonight, but he has an interesting story. Speaking of that, 1964, I was born in 1966. Anyway, I'd like Ted to tell that story. I think it's real interesting. Please welcome Ted Humes, our candidate for Corporation Commissioner.
My friends, it really is a sheer delight to be here because, can I be heard? I won't say anything about the Corporation Commission, but I'm so delighted to add my little memorabilia, my reminiscences of Barry Goldwater, and like Bob Corbin, I too was at the Cow Palace in 1964 under somewhat different circumstances. I too was caught up in the Goldwater frenzy in the early 60s, attracted to his banner like so many people, and we formed the Western Pennsylvania Citizens for Goldwater. I was from Pittsburgh. I was working with the draft Goldwater committee thanks to the sufferance of my boss, who was a very ardent conservative and a hard gold money man. And Barry, wouldn't Philip McKenna be so happy that they're selling gold coins today? And I wanted to do more, so in my Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania, I said, I'm going to run as a delegate for Barry Goldwater. And Mr. Scranton, of course, was our governor, and you know the governor has enormous power, and he wanted a unified delegation. And, of course, the delegates are elected by Republicans in the primary, and I start out every one of my speeches by saying, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you why I'm for Barry Goldwater. And the faint of heart says, Ted, you can't do that. This isn't Goldwater country. You'll get clobbered. They were running for Nelson Rockefeller and for Bill Scranton and Lodge and everybody, but I persisted. And on election day and election evening, I stayed all night at the courthouse in Westmoreland County at 7:30 in the morning, weary, bone-tired, and chilly from the rain. I got home. I was too tired to even have a cup of coffee. And before I flopped into bed, I said to my wife, well, Barry's got at least one delegate from Pennsylvania. Little did I know. After AP called a couple hours later in New York Times and the press, I was the Goldwater delegation from Pennsylvania. And it was a very traumatic experience, the Cow Palace, by way of a postscript. They were coming down to the vote, and we got past Oregon, and Pennsylvania had 64 delegates. I was the rebel in the delegation, and I tried to get a hold of Bill Scranton to say, Bill, we can put him over. Let's put him over. He wouldn't yield, and the honor went to South Carolina and Drake Edens, I believe it was. But anyway, my friends, the point is that we lost the battle, we won the war. Barry went through the campaign. I was the state chairman for Pennsylvania, and like the brave soldier he is, he endured and persisted in the almost certain knowledge that we weren't going to prevail. But as I indicated before, the devastation to the Me Too Republicans, back then they were Me Too Republicans, not moderates, they were Me Too. But you think about it, the devastation is so complete that their sole remaining acolyte, their sole spear carrier in Washington today, believe it or not, is Lowell Weicker. So thanks again so much, and I'm indeed pleased to have the small role to play in your homage to Barry Goldwater. Thanks.
I am pleased to send warm greetings to my fellow Republicans of Lake Havasu City as you honor a true American hero, Senator Barry Goldwater, and other outstanding Arizona Republicans. 35 years ago, Barry Goldwater brought to the Senate a dedication to the ideals which have made our country great and an ability for leadership which has rarely been matched. I'm especially grateful for Barry's work on behalf of a strong national defense. In addition, we have a great team to continue Barry Goldwater's noteworthy tradition in Congress. The enthusiasm of loyal Republicans like you helped produce a mandate that will keep America on the right course through the next century. Nancy and I send our warmest best wishes, and we especially want to send our appreciation for the friendship and leadership of Barry Goldwater. Barry, we will surely miss you. Ronald and Nancy Reagan.
I go back farther than the convention at the Cow Palace, Barry, don't we? We go back a few years. In fact, as we met up to Payson, as we go around, John McCain lets out something about me that says, you know, Evan Meekum and I have something in common. We're both lousy pilots. We both got shot down in the wars. Darned if Barry doesn't pull out another skeleton in the closet. And Barry, don't tell that one tonight. That's but anyway, I do have great fond memories. I recall when my old friend Barry Goldwater, who we had flown with in the 197 Fighter Squadron in the Air National Guard, and I moved down to a little town called Ajo in 1950. And darn if in 52 Barry didn't get on the ballot and campaign to be United States Senator. I remember when you came down to Ajo, Barry, and your speech, and it was a great speech. And you know, it was an interesting thing. He had the federal budget in a book, and I don't know how high it is now, but in those days you believe you could carry it. It was, and it talked about that budget, and he's been talking about that ever since. You know, that year in Ajo, Barry, you didn't win in Ajo. I'm sure glad you won in the rest of the state. Ajo was only 10-1 Democratic. And I'll tell you, you and Ike did pretty good down there. You only got beat 6-1. So you did pretty good. You made great inroads in the Democratic stronghold. I have appreciated so much through these years to watch Barry stand straight and tall and always ready to stand up for what's right in America. I really have always appreciated the fact that he was willing to speak his mind, and that in the times when being a conservative certainly was not popular, that he forged ahead. And you know, I talked to him back in Washington close to a couple of weeks ago. I guess it was 2 weeks ago today, wasn't it, Barry? And I said, you know, Barry, this is the first year that we have a Republican majority in Arizona. Back in the beginning, when you could have Republican conventions in a telephone booth, you started then, and I was a little ways behind you, but not far. Did you ever dream that we would have a majority of Republicans in Arizona? Well, he said, hell no. So I want to propose to you that on November the 4th, as we have a great Republican victory, that we dedicate that victory to Barry Goldwater. He's the one that has plowed the furrows, and he's the one that's led the way, and he's the one that's been the inspiration. And there isn't anybody who's going to deserve the credit for a great Republican victory as we, as a Republican Party, take the leadership of this state and show people that we have the maturity and the determination and certainly the will and certainly the consideration of the people, that we can show them how Republicans can take over the government and do that which we should. I've told Barry before, I hope about 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night he can come down to the Hilton, because I, for one, want to raise up his hand in a victory celebration and be one of those that pays homage to him and gives credit and dedicates a great victory, a great era to a great American and a great Arizonan, Barry Goldwater, United States Senator, and he'll always be a United States Senator as far as I'm concerned. Thank you very much.
For a 20-year-old to have the honor of introducing a congressman, well, that's a big thrill. But to introduce a friend who just happens to be a congressman, well, that's even better. Congressman Stump and I met 4 years ago in this very room. We were here to honor him after his courageous political decision to leave the Democrat Party and become a Republican. And since then, as Lisa Jackson, who's sitting over there in the corner, will attest to, I have bothered the congressman and his staff on a regular weekly basis. 2 years ago, I had the pleasure of introducing the congressman at the Teenage Republican Convention. At that time, I told of his many accomplishments and achievements since he was elected in 1976. But as I did with the senator earlier tonight, I want you to hear the important stuff. Bob Stump is a native Arizonan. He was born in Tolleson. He graduated from ASU, the university with the awesome football team this year. He served in the U.S. Navy. He was elected to the Arizona House of Representatives and then to the state Senate. And in 1976, he was elected a congressman, and the rest is history. On a personal level, Bob has 3 kids. He shuns the media, and he enjoys skydiving in his spare time. Actually, I made the skydiving part up. Senator Goldwater said I needed something else to put in there, and I thought that sounded pretty good. Actually, I'm sure at the earliest opportunity, Bob will try it, now that I've suggested it. In all honesty, I have a deep admiration and respect for Congressman Stump. In studying the other members of our Congress, you will not find one who works as hard for his constituents and state as our congressman does. Ladies and gentlemen, Congressman Bob Stump.
Thank you, Jim. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here this evening. I would first like to thank Jim and the committee for making this possible for all of us to be here. I certainly feel privileged to be here to honor what I think is a great American. I was not a Republican supporter back there in 1964, or at least a member of the Republican Party, but I was one hell of a Democrat supporter for Barry Goldwater in 1964, I'll tell you. I don't know anybody that I admire more in politics than Barry Goldwater, and I've had the opportunity to serve very closely with him during my 10 years in the Congress. For 6 years, I sat with him on the Intelligence Committee, and for the last 10 years, and for the last 3 weeks in particular, across the table, night after night, trying to resolve our differences on the defense bill this year on the Armed Services Committee. And he's quite an operator, I'll tell you. Just last week alone, he saved in one little swoop, just because of his dogged determination to stop a parochial interest in the New York delegation, $150 million for this country, just because they were trying to shove a trainer down the Air Force throat and they didn't want it.
We're not debating an airplane. The Air Force doesn't want it. I wish you could get that through your head. I'm not talking airplanes. I'm talking about the Air Force, and they don't want it.
This body that the plane couldn't even fly.
Oh,
now you're pumped to the floor, and you say, I'll read the record.
I'll read I never said that airplane wouldn't fly.
You said you wouldn't fly it yourself.
I flew it.
Nobody was willing to bite the bullet to stand up and fight for the Air Force like Goldwater was, and I'll tell you, he did a hell of a job. I think that history will show that this gentleman right here probably did more for conservatism in this country than anybody in recent history. We can all look up to that. He's been a tremendous leader for those of us I know that have been elected, and I admire him for some of the stands he's taken. And it's not always popular. Barry Goldwater is one that stood for his convictions. And I'll tell you, when it's all over and all said and done, you can say that he did it his way, and he did it with integrity and honesty and with a conservative philosophy behind all that. And this country owes him a hell of a debt for that, I'll tell you. Barry, we're going to miss you. I hope when you sit up there on that hill and you see that we're going wrong back there, that you let us know about it, which I'm sure you will. I want to wish you the very best for the many years of the leadership that you've given and shown to us and for this country, and the things that you've done for President Reagan and been one of his closest military advisors, and we wish you the very best. And it's been a great pleasure serving with you. Thank you.
I want to say, allow me just 1 minute. For a 20-year-old to sit between Senator Barry Goldwater and Congressman Bob Stump, I'm glad that we're making a video of this, because I am not going to remember anything that has happened for the last 2 hours. The man who introduces our main speaker and honoree this evening has lived in Lake Havasu City for 22 years. And for the last 7 years, I've considered him a personal friend, and I know I have the reputation of being his strongest political backer. My only regret in knowing Jerry so well is that so many will never have the opportunity to get to know him and his wife, Pat, as I've had the opportunity to do so. In 1980, Jerry Holt ran for county supervisor. In 1984, Supervisor Holt ran for re-election. In 1986, he is the chairman of the Board of Supervisors. Ladies and gentlemen, to introduce our main speaker tonight, Supervisor Jerry Holt.
You know, with Attorney General Bob Corbin, and with Evan Meekum as our next governor, and with John McCain, who stood on a soapbox to debate Richard Kimball, I can tell you the short people are taking over. You tall people better beware. Well, thank you, Jim. It's an honor to share the podium with such a dedicated young Republican. You know, I've had a little experience in putting events such as these together, and I can tell you it is no small task. For someone who is barely out of the ranks of teenager, it is, in my opinion, an achievement worthy of the highest compliment. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure our guest of honor wouldn't mind if you joined me in a round of applause for the person most responsible for tonight's program, Mr. Jim Heath. Mr. Chairman, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen of the Republican Party. As most of you know, our country is full of politicians, some good, some not so good. But in Senator Barry Goldwater, we have been privileged to have a true statesman, that rare breed, one who has never valued political victory more than personal honesty. A man who has spent fully 30 years of his life in the company of the leaders of America, and indeed of the world. A man who, hindsight tells us, may well have been elected President of these United States had it not been for the small minds of a few dissident but very powerful Republicans like Bill Scranton and Nelson Rockefeller, who, among other Republicans, poured poison into the Republican well of 1964 and sold out to a Texas power broker, resulting, I might add, in one of the biggest mistakes in American history. But Barry Goldwater is above all that. He is truly a giant among men. A man who was present in the Oval Office as John Kennedy faced the reality of the Bay of Pigs. A man who shared the agony and frustration of President Dwight Eisenhower when he was abused by critics who didn't know and couldn't know what they were talking about regarding the utilization and secret development of the U-2 spy plane. A man who went to Camp David to urge principle above party when Richard Milhouse Nixon broke his vows of statesmanship on a wheel of political expediency. a man who indeed has changed the course of history. And although Barry Goldwater is all these things, he is still more. As a Major General of the United States Air Force Reserve, he has piloted more than 160 different types of aircraft, including helicopters and gliders, and he flew the plane that brought him to Lake Havasu City this evening. He was the first non-rated test pilot to fly the U-2, the B-1 bomber, the SR-71, and the XV-15. His watchword is simply, "can do." Well, the senior senator from Arizona truly personifies the symbol of Americanism. And at 77 years old, just last week, wrote his own last chapter as a United States Senator in a floor fight, as we've heard previously mentioned, with Senators D'Amato and Moynihan of New York. One last time, he refused to compromise his principles and choked off a maneuver to fund a pork barrel project the Air Force didn't need or even want. And as the complet d'etat, if you will, he turned to Senator Ted Stevens of Alaska and put him in his place just for good measure. Ladies and gentlemen, it is truly an indescribable honor to present one of the greatest Americans ever to walk the face of the earth, the Honorable Barry Goldwater.
Thank you. Now, you kind of hate to hear all that malarkey end. I've always told my brother and sister those things, but they sort of laugh at me. But it's really a great thrill to be here tonight. I can't tell you the pleasures that I get in traveling around my Arizona, because I've had the pleasure of watching it grow. Not from the start by a long shot, but I remember flying over to the west and flying across the Colorado River at night, and all you could see would be Yuma down south, Blythe, Parker, and then Needles, and that was the end of it. And coming in tonight, I remarked, as far as you can see up and down the Colorado River, there's nothing but lights. And it's becoming the most popular place to live in the whole country. And Jim, I want to thank you. You've done a remarkable job, even if you worked more until 1966. 1966, I was only 57 years old. And I had a lot of fun. I want to congratulate Mr. Humphreys and that band. It's always been a marvel to me how within 2 or 3 weeks after school starts, they put a band together. And this is the best I've ever heard. And Mr. Humphreys should be congratulated. I was an old trombone player. I knew Jack Teagarden. He was my pet when I was growing up. And I had this old trombone in my closet, and I took it out once in a while after a couple of beers, and the neighbors raised the devil with it, so I don't play it very much. And the jug band, I couldn't believe that. I got to find that jug. That's the biggest thing I've ever seen. And I remember so well this place when there wasn't anything here but a landing strip, and it was a place that B-17s practiced takeoffs and landings. It was called Site 6, and I was stationed down in Yuma then, and we used to fly up there just for the devil of it and see what was going on. And I can't believe that in 40 years, this community has grown to be over 18,000 people. That's hard to believe. It's about as hard for me to believe as realizing that Phoenix, when I was born, was 10,000 people, the whole valley, including Tolleson, which we didn't count. And now we're creeping up on 2 million. Well, it's a pleasure to be here tonight with my old friend Ted Humes, who I've known many, many years when he lived up in Pennsylvania. I can tell you with his background, he'll make you a great commissioner, and I sure hope you put him in. He deserves it, and I'll back him to the hilt. And Bob Corbin, without a doubt, is one of the outstanding attorney generals in the whole country. And I hear this from the proper people, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, who I got to know very well when we were raising the other Arizonan to Chief Justice. And he spoke highly of Bob. And Bob, I wish you all the luck in the world, but you don't need it. You haven't got any opposition. I've always wished I could do that, but I never could. And Bob Stump, what a great contribution it was to the country and to our party to get Bob to change. I thought for a long time that he was sorry that he became a Republican, but now I think he really enjoys it. And like Bob told you, we served on the Intelligence Committee together, and we just finished 3 solid weeks of arguing it out between the House and the Senate, and this goes on every year. It used to take a little longer than 3 weeks, and I can remember when it only took a couple of hours. But they have a chairman over in the House, doesn't quite see eye to eye with the Republican concept of defense, so we had our troubles. But Bob's a great man back there. And now I just want to say a word about Ev Meekum. We've known each other, I guess, close to 50 years. And the thing he didn't want me to tell about him, and it's my pet story, because we were both pilots and we both flew fighter aircraft, and we were on duty over in California. And I happened to be operations officer that day, and I got a telephone call that one of your boys has bailed out. Well, I said, where is he? And they told me about where he would be, and I got in the Jeep and drove out, and there was old Ev just sitting on his parachute, and there was the airplane over there about a half mile with, it was a mess. But anybody that can bail out of a P-51 and live to tell about it, I think will make a hell of a governor. There's something I think you should really consider as Arizonans. This is the first time in our history that we've had 3 candidates. Now, there is a Democrat candidate, and she's a very nice woman. I've known her a long time. And there's Ev. He's a Republican. But we've got another candidate. We don't know what he is. And I want you to think about that. If you should elect a man like that governor, there's nobody owes him any loyalty, the Republican or the Democrat Party. And when he's sitting in the governor's chair, if he does, and he wants to get something done, he's got to have a lot of help from one party. But neither party will give him any help at all. So think about that. We don't want a loner sitting up there. I think he'd be much happier running his apartments. And I want to say something about Ev, because I have known in my life every governor that the state of Arizona's had. Now, I didn't know the first one too well when he was a governor, but I knew him as a young boy, and every good governor we've had has been in Arizona quite some time. And they've got to know Arizona. Now, I can't say that about the present one. I was going to bring Rose Mofford over here tonight, but she has to be governor. I think it's over 700 odd days that she's been governor, but that's all right. Bruce is out riding his bicycle, and that does him a lot of good. But I like Ev because he knows Arizona. He's been successful. He knows how to run a business, and he get along with people. And now, while the young man isn't with us tonight, I do want to just stick an oar in for John McCain. The fact that he was shot down over Hanoi and was a prisoner for nearly 6 years with a broken back and broken legs isn't a real good reason to make him a United States Senator. But I'll tell you, the rest of his background is a good reason. He was in the Navy. He could have been an admiral. He could have been an admiral now, but they wouldn't let him command a ship because he hadn't had 5 years at sea. And I remember going up to the commander-in-chief of the Navy, and I said, how in the hell is a man going to get 5 years at sea when he's been sitting in jail over in Hanoi? Well, that's Navy custom, and we're not going to change it. Well, I said, you're going to lose a good man. And they did. And John's father was a 4-star admiral in command of the Pacific, and John's grandfather was a 4-star admiral. This gives him a background of knowledge in military affairs, coupled with the knowledge that he gained when he was legislative liaison. Now, that's a fancy word for the guy that represents a certain service over in the Senate and the House. And when you write letters to me complaining about your son and you don't know what he's doing, you don't want him to be here, there, or someplace else, we just shoot it over to the Pentagon, and one of the legislative liaison people bring us an answer. So don't blame it on us. It's those fellows. But I'm so happy that McCain is going to take my place. He's going to be a wonderful senator. He's going to be a great addition to the people that we have there. And now let me just thank you for this evening. And while I would be a liar if I didn't say that it touched me, I'd just like for you to think about something. American politics seem to be constantly going in a circle. Now, we Republicans started suffering way back in 1928. I remember that because I quit school and went to work, and we were in the Big Depression. And the Republicans had Herbert Hoover, and no money, and no new men, and no ideas. And here we are with a great president, a lot of ideas, and a lot of fine young people coming along. And the Democrats are faced with no men, no money, and no ideas. So they're going around the circle. And I would say the conservatism, this wasn't any fault of mine. I just happened to get on the bandwagon when this wheel was going around, starting back up the successful road of conservatism. It would have gotten there without me, but I sure enjoyed being along for the ride. So I'd give the Republicans maybe another 15 years, maybe a little longer. We'll run out of men, we'll run out of money, we'll run out of ideas. I just hope to God the Democrats change their ideas of how we should live in this country, and I think they're going to probably come around to it. They're starting to now. But what are we talking about when we talk about our government? We're talking about freedom, and so many people tend to overlook that. They look on their government as a source of power, the source of maybe money. How many times you stop and think, why did my ancestors come to this country? And every one of us had ancestors that came from someplace else. Mine came from Poland. There were 22 of them in one family, and they didn't want to serve in the Russian army. So they sneaked off and came to the United States, not looking for money, and not looking for education. They were looking for freedom. Now, you recall in your history, we didn't know, our forefathers, our founding fathers, really didn't know what freedom was, what they were looking for. They thought it might be freedom from taxes, freedom from the oppressive rules of kings, knights, and so forth. And actually it took almost 100 years until the fathers in Philadelphia decided that we were endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's all we're about. That's all we want to talk about and think about. That's what's made America great. It's what will keep America great. Because if we don't keep freedom, we become like every other country that has lost the freedom and gone down the chute. That's what makes us work. That's what makes the Democrat Party and the Republican Party when you get right down to the bottom of it. And while you don't hear much talk about it from the people in Congress, it's the driving force back there of those who want to get ahead and want to get their country ahead. I think back in our history, and I haven't pursued this too far, I think of how the United States allowed Berlin to be divided into two, how we allowed China to be divided. We didn't do anything much about Afghanistan, how the Bay of Pigs was allowed to just fall through when we had it won. And that's been the history of this country, and it never been brought home to me so vividly as last January I took a trip around the world. And I didn't visit the popular places that people think of when they travel. I hit Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, even stopped out in Diego Garcia, which is in the middle of nothing, and went up to Saudi Arabia, Oman, and every place I went, I heard criticism of my country. We can't trust you. Why don't you keep your word? I remember sitting with the Sultan of Saudi Arabia, who was in charge of military, the F-15 aircraft that they bought from us and promised to them. Well, one of the great things that's happened just a few months ago when President Reagan decided that the country, the United States, cannot back down anymore. And he was called upon in his own judgment to do something about Libya and what they represent in this world. So he ordered an aircraft strike, probably the most complicated airstrike ever devised. It lasted 11 seconds. An aircraft came from as far away as 3,500 miles. But ever since then, wherever I go in this world, I hear things like, "Thank God you finally waked up." And I have no hesitancy in making a prediction, and I wished I could live forever and watch it come true. As long as the United States maintains a respectable military power, along with its economic power, its moral power, there's never going to be another war involving the United States. But we have to keep strong. You have to be strong. We've got to keep our military strong. And we've got to have decency in this country and a high degree of moral character. Those are the things the world look to us for. And I'm going to enjoy retirement because I can sit up on my hill shooting jackrabbits and just realize that our country has turned the corner and we're going ahead. I want to thank you for tonight. It's been wonderful. It's one of the nicest affairs I've ever attended, and although I'd like to believe everything I heard, I'll believe about half of it. Thank you.
Captain Frank Gibson of the San Bernardino Unit of the Air Force is with us here tonight, and he would like, on behalf of the United States Air Force, to present something to Senator Goldwater.
Thank you for the invitation to join you here tonight. I would like to stress, however, that I am here in a professional and nonpartisan capacity, and beg you to remember that throughout my presentation. I represent 3562nd United States Air Force Recruiting Squadron, which is headquartered at Norton Air Force Base, San Bernardino, California, However, we do have total responsibility for all active duty Air Force recruiting in the great state of Arizona. Over the past many years, it has been our privilege to work as partners with all of you in offering meaningful employment, continuing education programs, and technical training opportunities to Arizona's quality young men and women. This partnership has helped many of these young people to further their educations, learn marketable skills, and earn a sense of pride from honorable service to their country. Many of these young people would then return home to Arizona at the completion of their military tour of duty and employ the skills and talents they have learned in the private sector for the benefit of your economy. In return, these outstanding young people have helped make our Air Force the greatest in the world. So tonight, on behalf of the men and women of the world's greatest Air Force, it is my privilege to present Senator Goldwater with a small token of our appreciation for his continued support of this great partnership between the people of Arizona and your United States Air Force. Senator Goldwater, thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Captain Gibson. Also tonight, I hope Carl Bell got the word. What? Eh? On behalf of, where's Art Tuberman? Is he back there? Stand up. Art Tuberman has arranged on behalf of Lake Havasu City Republicans a very special coin display for Senator Goldwater, and he made it on behalf of all Republicans in Lake Havasu City. Art, stand up so everybody can see you, and thank you for making this for us. Carl Bell, the president of the Lake Havasu Republican Forum, would like to present these coins to Senator Goldwater on behalf of Lake Havasu City.
Senator Barry Goldwater, it's my honor to present to you tonight a gift from all of Lake Havasu City. This is an especially prepared set of Lake Havasu London Bridge commemorative issues honoring the 1976 bicentennial year, the 1986 centennial year of the Statue of Liberty, and the 1987 bicentennial year signing of the U.S. Constitution, presented to the Honorable Barry M. Goldwater, United States Senator. This was designed and prepared by and donated by Art Tuberman with deep appreciation, respect, and admiration on behalf of the entire Republican population of Lake Havasu City, Arizona. In grateful recognition and appreciation to his decade of service to his country and to the people of the great state of Arizona, 21st of October, 1986.
You got to spend these up here, though.
Would you all please join me now in a toast? I mentioned earlier the Goldwater department store slogan, and it's appropriate here tonight. Senator Barry Goldwater, the best always.
You're here. You're here. Thank you. Thank you. I was, I'd like to... I'd like to drink a toast to all of you for having contributed so much to the history of our state and our country. To all of you.
Would you please remain standing for our benediction this evening?
Let's pray. Again, Father, we come to you with gratitude. Gratitude for tonight's privilege. Gratitude for what has happened along the way and through the life of this man that you have used here in our land. We thank you so much for the memories, for the blessings that he has helped to bring to us. We think tonight of Elijah and how that when his work was done, his mantle was passed to Elisha. We pray that there might be other Arizonans, contemporary Elishas that might carry forth the standard that Barry Morris Goldwater has carried for these many, many years. We pray for those who have traveled to do as they leave tonight, for their protection. We pray for our nation. We pray regarding the election just around the corner. We just put ourselves tonight in your care and ask your blessing upon each of us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, somebody start singing back there. Do we have a keynote? Somebody lead us. Somebody bold. America, land that I love, stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Thanks for coming tonight, everybody. Have a good night.
In your heart you know he's right. So go Goldwater, let's go Goldwater, let's go Goldwater all the way. Just make a note to cast your vote for Mr. USA. Goldwater! The world that we are free and Goldwater.